Hi y'all, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Lauren. I'm a first grade teacher in Massachusetts. And this, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes. My name is Maddie and I'm a first year kindergarten teacher. I have an Instagram and teacher vlog just like Lauren. Mine is called Primarily Yours, which we'll link down in the description box for you.
Yes, of course. And this is one of my best friends. Yes. We are going to answer some questions together. We're actually going to do a part 1 here on this channel, and then part 2 will be over on Maddie's channel at Primarily Yours. We have a bunch of questions that you guys submitted on Instagram, some related to like our friendship and our experience in internship. We actually were co-teachers first. We were like co-interns.
It was the best.
So yeah, those are the golden days. So we'll talk more about that, but that's what we're going to talk about mostly here, and then we'll just keep on going, and you can catch part 2 over at Maddie's channel.
Yeah.
Should we get started?
Yeah, so housekeeping kind of in this first video, we're going to talk about our friendship and then just our college experience and student teaching and internship, and then a little bit of getting the job too in that process, and Lauren has a lot of wisdom related to that, and so that's why I wanted this part of it on her channel, because she is just a fountain of wisdom in that department. And then we're going to have part 2 over on my channel, which we'll also have linked for you in the description, but just some more specific questions about our school routines and schedules, and then just our first year experience in general, and just some and just some general teaching questions and miscellaneous. So I think we're ready to get started.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Oh my gosh, this note, you guys, is so long. We just had to scroll to the top. I love you guys for submitting so many questions.
Yes,
These will be
so
good.
Many good ones.
Okay, the first little section, we'll talk about a little bit about our friendship, and the first question says, how did you meet? So,
the Lord.
Yeah, really, divine intervention. We say that all the time, but we've talked a little bit about it, touched on it, but Maddie and I both went to the University of Florida. We were actually, yeah, go Gators. Big Gator fan here, you guys know that. We were in different semesters. So I started my program, the same program that Maddie was in, started our program. I was actually a semester ahead, and then just by total chance, decided to study abroad and ended up a semester back and rejoined a different cohort, and I joined
mine.
Yes, Maddie's cohort, which is the best thing that could have ever happened. Well, it's not her cohort, she didn't own it, but you know what I mean. So we actually went through undergrad and then the master's year really all together with the same group of about like 24 people. So that's how we met, and then we were placed in pre-internship is what it was called together. So it was the last student teaching experience we had before our master's year, before the year-long like full-time internship started. So do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, so it was the best, and our mentor teacher was amazing. Her Instagram is the turquoise teacher on Instagram.
Awesome.
She is really wonderful, but we were both placed in that classroom together, and so our schedules were a little bit different just because of our different schedules. Sorry, that was
but most of the time we were there together.
Yeah. And so we sometimes got to teach alongside each other and sometimes separately and observing each other, and it was just one of the best experiences. That was really one of the only placements that we had together with 2 people in one classroom, and because that was at the very end of our undergrad experience, we were teaching a lot, and we also just had a really awesome mentor teacher who really pushed us to do a lot of teaching and activity planning, and like that last week that we were there, we planned and taught the entire week, like all day, every day, which was really good experience for us. So yeah, it was super fun, awesome mentor teacher, so fun getting to teach alongside Lauren. So yeah, that's how we met.
Yes, and we actually didn't even really know each other that well, and I will say not even everyone was put with another person. Like it wasn't even that everyone had a partner. Some people were by themselves, so it was totally just worked out. Like God had a hand in everything, I'm so sure of it. But it was out of town too, so it was I think maybe like a 25-minute drive.
Yeah, it was like 30 minutes away.
Yeah, so the days that we were able to go together, we would drive together. So we got to know each other a little bit more. Maddie introduced me to the teacher Instagram world, which I didn't know existed, so you can thank her for all of that.
And we're so glad she's here.
Yes, and now here we are.
Yep. The next one says, do you miss co-teaching together?
Yeah.
Yes. A lot.
Oh, yeah.
It was so fun, just like I said a few minutes ago, it was so fun to just get to plan and do things together and just kind of bring both of our creative minds and forces and ideas and all of that together, which you can do if you're not in the same classroom, but it was just so special to get to be planning for like the exact same kids and the same lessons, which was just really awesome. And I really hope that one day a miracle happens and we get to teach next door to each other or down the hall or at the same school or even in the same city or state.
That would be the dream. So Maddie teaches kindergarten, and the dream is that we'd be in the same school, and her kindergartners would just come on up to first grade, and then we could share those students again, because it was very nice. We both also, I mean, everyone has different teaching styles, but just to see, like, you have such patience and you have such a caring perspective, and everything is very much based on like their emotional well-being and just loving them. And it was just the first time that I'd met someone who truly was just so passionate for teaching. So yeah, it was great. That's how we met. And I absolutely miss having Maddie there and just being able to be like a sounding board for one another and being able to use each of our strengths together. Because I mean, it would be awesome if every room could have 2 people in it, 3 people in it, more than just me in it. But yeah. All right, so the next one, favorite thing about each other. Oh, I love that. How long do we have? So, yeah, really. I kind of just said mine, but I think Maddie has the most like patient and loving spirit, and just generally you're so good at knowing people. Like, we just ate lunch before we are filming this, and even then I was just saying, like, you know my heart so well. And she just really loves people well. And I mean, above all else, aside from teaching, you just love people so well, and that makes you so effective in the classroom, but it just also makes her a really effective friend to have. So that would be my favorite thing about Maddie.
Well, now that I'm done thank you, that was very sweet. So many things about Lauren. I mean, as you guys know from watching her, like, what you see in her videos is absolutely her. Like, her bubbly personality, like I was talking to her yesterday, I was like, you just feel like a ray of sunshine. Like, any room that you walk into, you just feel, you know the quote that's like, stay close to people that feel like sunshine? That's this girl. And she has just always been such an encouragement to me, and something that is very unique about Lauren that I just don't experience in a lot of other friendships. Lauren is just so wise beyond her years, and not only is she wise, she's so well-spoken and articulate, and a lot of times throughout the years of our friendship, I would be telling her kind of how I was feeling about something, and I like just couldn't find the words to figure out what I wanted to say. She would like say exactly what was all the things in my head. She would say it. I was like, yes, that's exactly it.
I have a bad habit of like narrating what she's saying as she's saying it, but
no, it was so helpful. But yes, I just love your personality, and your heart is just so caring too for your kids, your family, your friends, Jake, just everyone. You are just so caring and so passionate about everything that you have ever done. And I just am so thankful for you.
Okay, guys, I'm moving back to Florida. I guess we'll move on, but now you can tell.
Not that I love BESTIE.
Yeah. Thank you.
And this is the last one in our like friendship.
Yes, and then we'll talk a little bit about the whole college life. But this one says, how do you stay connected as friends despite the distance? There were definitely like growing pains, I would say, especially with us both being in our first year and trying to, you know, stay afloat with that, but also just be more than afloat, be good at it, and just really, I think you just have to be intentional, and even like scheduling, like FaceTimes helps. Like, we're gonna have a FaceTime on Thursday night at 8 p.m. Like, you have to just be intentional about carving out the time. And then we had like a long-standing like bestie date night, almost, I would call it. I don't even remember what day of the week it was, but
I think it was Thursdays, actually.
Thursday? Yeah. Okay, when we were in Gainesville even doing like the master's year.
Oh, no, that was Tuesdays.
It was Tuesdays. Yeah. Okay, we had a day where like no matter what, we would have dinner together that day. And it was just like a
no
long-standing, we never made plans for that night. And we always would like have dinner together, catch up, and like occasionally, you know, things happen. But I think we had like a good foundation of prioritizing time with each other, and that helps.
Yeah,
with,
and we
like,
could always
leaving far away.
Look forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And being so far apart, like more than 1,000 miles across the country, has been difficult, and I know I haven't done as much as I could have to maintain, you know, just like,
oh my gosh, girl, same.
It's just hard. First year's hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
But I mean, looking back on the first half of the year, there's definitely some things that I could have done more, you know, but I think just going forward, especially with the second half of this year, of kind of getting back into setting like a phone or a FaceTime date for like once a week or once every other week for like a little bit of time. And I know that I always, if something comes up in the evening, like dinner or something like that, I'm like, no, I'm too tired, like can't do that. But if I schedule it ahead of time and then I kind of push myself to do it, I'm always thankful after I've done it.
Yeah.
And so I would just encourage you to just to be intentional with carving the time out, because it really is worth it if you make it a priority.
And I will say, having other people in the profession, like other people who are also teachers, aside from those that you work with, because obviously those are very important relationships, but to also have someone that you've known for a while, and to be so fortunate for that person to be a teacher as well, and to be able to really understand one another and what you're dealing with, it only makes things easier. It only makes things feel better. It never is like a burden to sit down and talk. We never have enough time, actually. We always wish that we had more time. So yeah, it's only going to help you, especially like in the classroom, but just in life and in managing and balancing it all. It only helps make things better, to be honest. So yeah,
sweet.
It's worth it.
Yes.
If your teacher bestie moves across the country, sorry. It's worth it. It'll be okay. All right,
we're going to move to part 2, which we're going to kind of focus on just our college experience, mostly undergrad, a little bit of our master's year also, and just our student teaching and internship experience. So kind of the first question that first of all, we got a lot of questions about just student teaching and internship in general and just internship tips. And so we kind of funneled them down into a few questions that we hope can answer all the ones that were submitted.
And we read all of them, and we have like a shared note. So we were both adding the questions people were asking, and a lot of them repeated. Naturally, I mean, people are curious about the same things. So if it was asked 5 times, we'll just say it once. But thank you for everyone. They're all valid questions.
Yes.
We'll talk about everything, I promise.
So the first one was, what can I expect with student teaching? Let's start.
Sure. I would say know that you are going to make mistakes, and know that you should really feel comfortable trying things. I would say I almost feel like I should have done even more in my student teaching. When I started, I mean, even though we had a full year of an internship before we started teaching in our own classrooms, I mean, like, I could have done that forever, because you're always learning and you're always trying new things and you're always being vulnerable and like taking the risk to really start teaching and like start the planning, start the lessons by yourself. Like, if your mentor doesn't initiate it, you should initiate it, or your cooperating teacher, supervising teacher, whoever it is. But I would just say, as a student teacher, expect your roles and your responsibilities to really shift. Would you agree? Like, you move from a college student to living as a teacher, but you're still in college, if that makes sense. You still have the classes, you still have your work to do for your university classes, but you're really working like a full-time job.
Right.
I mean, what would you say to expect? Or
absolutely, all of the things that Lauren said, but that was kind of definitely when I shifted from being a college student to being more so of a professional, unpaid professional, but you know what I mean, of just the experience and dressing professionally, having the business hours, you know, instead of college, like we're hanging out at night, you know, that kind of thing. But just like Lauren said, be expectant and let's see, how do I want to say it? Just be expectant for opportunities, and if they are not presented to you, and if your mentor teacher is not one that offers readily, like, hey, do you want to teach this lesson? Do you want to take over this subject? Be willing to ask for that, because in our experience and just talking to other friends, pretty much every mentor teacher was willing to give more and let you practice more if you asked. A lot of times they just didn't always remember to offer it. But if we asked to have an experience or to teach a certain lesson, or I think you started taking over subject by subject, right?
Yes. So we had, it's kind of hard because when people refer to student teaching, in my mind, there's student teaching and then there's the internship, because they are very distinct at Florida specifically, but it's kind of the same thing. So in our like student teaching, more volunteering based, I wasn't doing as much, but then when I did the internship, my mentor teacher, it was actually, I was her first intern, which I was surprised because she had such a good structure. But I took over one subject at a time as we progressed through the year. So I started with like, science and social studies. Those are kind of, I don't know how you would put it, like the more low risk subject areas. They're more like scripted, and there's not so much variation between the lessons. So I started with that and then just kind of grew from there. And by, I think the last like full semester, I was planning everything and teaching everything. So I had almost a full semester's experience of really teaching. So
and both of our experience was a little bit different than a typical student internship experience because we graduated with our bachelor's degrees in December, and then we started our full year master's internship in January. And so I don't know about you, but at first I was a little disappointed about that because I wanted to see the beginning of the year, and coming in January is not as fun as like all the back to school stuff in August.
Yeah.
But I know for me, looking back now, that was such a gift of kind of having a slower entrance and start to things in January, where I got to be more observant and just watch my mentor teacher and how things run and slowly take things over. And then when we, because we were both with the same mentor teacher again the following school year for that fall, so we did a spring and then a fall, so two different groups of kids, but same mentor teacher.
Yeah, we did a calendar year rather than a school year, so we had two chunks of kids.
Yeah. But it was nice to already have that relationship built, and so I was able to kind of absorb more, but because we had been with them for some months already. So I would just say be observant at first and just kind of notice the patterns of your cooperating or mentor teacher, just kind of some of their habits, how you can work together well, and just have some explicit conversations of their expectations of you and your expectations of them. Can kind of feel uncomfortable at first, but if you set that in the very beginning, I think you'll be much better off.
I would just say, like, overarchingly, go into student teaching as though you are a teacher.
Yes.
Don't think of yourself as a college student visiting a classroom and being like the fun friend or like
you're a co-teacher,
a babysitter mentality of like getting along with them. Like, go into it with the mentality of like, I'm a teacher, I'm responsible for these children, like emotional, social, academic well-being. Like, take it seriously, really. And I think I have a whole video about, I think I have two, like a part 1 and a part 2 of student teaching, like Q&As that you guys submitted, like specific student teaching questions. So yeah, if you have any more questions, it might be answered. Oh, I'm sorry. It might be answered in those videos, but we could talk all day.
Yep, and I'm going to have a Q&A about student teaching again soon too. Well, not again because I haven't done it.
There'll be more on her channel about student teaching.
So our next one is just internship experience and tips, which we kind of just covered. So we'll go to the next one.
Tips on time management during the internship. Ooh, I like this one, in parentheses. Balancing the workload, your practicum placement, plus other job or other obligations. So do you want to go first? Do you want me to?
Sure.
Okay.
It's hard. I would say being organized is so helpful. Whether you plan digitally, plan a paper planner, have something where your schedule is in it. Both of our internship placements, we were there all day, every day, same time, and so that didn't really change, but some of you might be in a situation where on Mondays you're there from 7 to 11, on Tuesdays you're there from 8 to 9:30, and it might change, so definitely have everything written down. Yeah, and I'm a big list maker, and I just like to brain dump all the things that need to get done.
Just notebooks for everything.
It's true. And they're all floral.
Yeah.
As you guys know, I like floral. But yeah, I would just say make lists for everything, like big brain dump, and then you can sort it into categories. And so, for example, I have several lists going right now, some related to like the teaching stuff, like YouTube, Instagram, all of that, but then for when we go back to school, I have like copies that I need to make, things that I need to laminate, things that I need to get out for reading stations, that kind of thing. And so all of that to say, making lists was honestly the thing that helped save me the most, and just trying the best we could to stay on top of things. It's really hard when you're at an internship all day, and then like we had evening classes from like either 4 to 7 or 5 to 8, and then we'd come home and need to do homework and then get up to be at our internship at like 7 the next morning again, which was kind of a hard schedule to get used to, but yeah, we definitely learned a lot. So yes, I would just say stay organized and write everything down, because you think you're going to remember, but you're not.
I would say all of that, and then on top of that, the first half of the internship, I was actually cheerleading still for UF. So I was, so on top of being a master's student and doing the full-time internship, I was also a collegiate cheerleader. So I was cheerleading for the men's basketball team, the Florida Gators. That's why I'm such a big Gator fan. If I haven't said that before, I'm sure I have. Like men's basketball, women's basketball, gymnastics. And then it was my senior year, so I was chosen to travel for tournaments, postseason tournaments and things. So I would just say that like the whole time, in knowing that that was my last year cheering, but also that it was such an important time to grow in my profession and my practice, you just have to look at it as like, this is 1 year.
Like a season.
Yeah. This is a season of my life that's going to be very draining of my time, but it's going to be so rewarding in the long run with like what you get out of it. So like, yes, you go to bed, you're exhausted. You wake up and it's like, oh my goodness, every minute of every day is taken with something. And there were people in our cohort even who had jobs. I mean, I taught, this is another thing. I was also teaching VIP kids. So I would wake up at like 4 and I would do a VIP kid. I'm crazy. I would do VIP kid in the mornings so that I could make some money, because we were paying for the internship hours and paying for our classes and working full time, but you're at a negative for that. So anyways, so I was doing VIP kid in the morning. I'd go to my internship all day. We had master's classes. To be quite honest, sometimes it feels like you can't be great at everything. Like, it's so frustrating. I mean, most people who go into teaching are very like driven and organized and type A, and I would say like you want to be great at everything. And sometimes, some days you have to choose to be really great at your internship and good at being a student. And I would say like it will all work out in the end and it will all be worth it. It's just a season. You have to get through it and just know that it's coming to an end one day and just soak up everything you can.
Yes. Yeah.
That helps me. Yeah. That helps me to keep everything balanced and just keep going, because sometimes, oh my goodness, it's a lot.
Yes.
But let's move along.
The next one was, what were your favorite and least favorite parts about your education prep program? So I think this is referring to our undergrad experience mostly, and just the preparation elementary education program that we went through. I would say my favorite is how they structured our cohort. So we had about 25 or 30 people in our cohort, and when we were juniors-ish, I know with credits, like I was technically a sophomore and you were a little bit older, but when you're about 2 years through all the gen ed credits and we were all placed into our major track, the elementary ed track, they put us in a cohort of 30. And because we were starting in January, ours was only 30, but the other people that started in fall, they had like more than 100 in all of their
they had like
semesters.
3 cohorts. Originally, I was in a fall cohort, so I would have done a school year internship. Like I was on that track, and I think there were 3 cohorts in my semester. But it was really nice to just have the same group to rely on. We had a Facebook group. I would agree that was a good one.
So we had the same 30 people that we had all of our classes with for those 2 years in person and then our master's year online. And so it was just so nice, like you said, to be able to do assignments together, and we would get dinner together and that kind of thing. So that was probably one of my favorite parts. And just the education program that we went through was very well recognized and well known for their excellence in all the things. And so that was nice and comforting to know that we were getting the highest quality education that we could get. I would say if I had to change one thing, is that I wish that there had been a little bit more focus on classroom management, because I feel like that they talked about it. We took classes on it, but it was kind of earlier on in our program when we didn't really know what they were talking about yet, which now they actually have restructured things so that classroom management is in your last semester when you are in that placement that we were in together, which I think is really helpful. But in my personal experience, I wish that they would have focused more on classroom management, because what we've both found is that if classroom management is not on lock, the academics have to pause. And so we took a lot of classes about academics. Like we took several science classes, several math classes, all of that, but only I think 1 classroom management class. So I just wish that we could have had more experiences of that, like when my mind was ready to receive it, not when I was first starting out in the program and I was like so overwhelmed with everything. But they've kind of restructured now that is later on.
That's a good point. That was what I was going to say. It's like sometimes we learn things in theory without having the opportunity to put them to practice, and you don't really internalize them as well when that's the case. But I guess I'll choose different ones. Favorite thing, I liked that we had the flexibility to get into different schools. Our placement where we met, like our pre-internship, wasn't even in like Gainesville, like the city of Gainesville. It was a little bit out of town, but just different student populations. But I will say that's also kind of one of my things I would change is right now I'm working in a pretty like urban setting. We just didn't really have like the opportunity to get into that setting, just at being like at the mercy of the location of the university we were at. Most of the schools there are in a pretty like suburban area, if not like a rural area. which are very different. And we definitely had different experiences like at the different schools and such. And we had the opportunity to get into some more specialty schools. I know I was at the ESOL Center School for the whole county, so I got some more experience like with ESOL and students learning languages and such. But I wish that we had like, I don't even know like what they could have done. Maybe like a focus week where we were taken to like maybe Jacksonville or like a different area, like a more urban setting, because we really didn't have any experience in an urban setting, and it is different. I would say where I'm working and teaching now, there's like a different set of tricks. Like everyone has a bag of tricks, and their lives are different, so your approach is a little different. But yeah, that would be nice to get some experience in that setting.
Yeah. So just to kind of give some background, our practicum placements, how it worked was we had 4 semesters of undergrad, and so we had a different placement for each of those 4 semesters that lasted the entire semester. And so we were in a variety of grade levels, a variety of different communities. Like Lauren said, some were outside of the town that we were in. And then our master's year was one mentor teacher, 2 different classes, but 1 mentor teacher for that whole calendar year. So we technically had 5 classroom experiences with some volunteering prior to entering the program.
And I think I talked about this a little bit in my like student teaching video maybe, but I was seeking out opportunities because I knew I wanted to kind of get a more diverse experience. So I did what's called like an alternative break, where I went and I taught in Guatemala for spring break. I was at like a school there working with kindergarten, teaching English, just a very different setting. And then the semester abroad that I did, which is why I ended up in Maddie's cohort, I was teaching English as an auxiliary teacher in Spain, in Sevilla. So I felt like there were opportunities that existed if you wanted to get a more diverse experience, but you had to really seek them out. Definitely.
Isn't she so cool? So many cool things that she's done.
Not really. But yeah, I would say trying to diversify the experience a little bit would be nice. Or at least giving the option too, if like someone knew.
Yeah.
Alrighty. How did your college experience, this is funny, how did your college experience prepare each of you for the real world of teaching? I would say I did a pretty good job of preparing us. I mean, I know that different people had different experiences like in their internships and with their mentor teachers and such, but I know that like my mentor was very candid with me, and anytime that she would have like an IEP meeting or 504 meetings or any of those other things that you don't really learn about, like all the other behind the scenes stuff that teachers do.
Like Lauren said a minute ago, you like hear some of the logistics, but it's not as meaningful when you don't have the actual experience of it.
And I would say the biggest difference from student teaching to like the real world of teaching is all of those parts. Like all of the things that you're not legally obligated or required to do as an intern that you are now in charge of. Like all of the parent communication, all of the meetings, all of the paperwork, really advocating for your students and
what they need.
And what they need from different support staff at the school. I would say my experience in particular with my mentor teacher, I think it did a pretty good job of preparing me for those things. She, the whole time, would just remind me, like, these are things that, like, right now I'm doing, but, like, you'll need to do these too. So come with me to this meeting. She never really used me as, like, a sub in those times. I would always get to go to the meetings and, like, really get that real side of teaching, of being the advocate and being the communicator and all of the other stuff that goes on. Yeah, I think that helped me a lot be ready for, like, the real side of things.
Yeah, I would honestly say the same thing of like that I got to experience those things of the IEP meetings and the parent communication and all of that.
Yeah.
But it just feels, even though they're pretty much all the same things and the same types of things, it just feels different now that I'm the only, I'm like the sole one that's responsible and in charge of all those things. So yeah, just everything that you said already.
Yeah, that's the real world of teaching. All right.
The next one is advice for undergraduates in school studying education. Kind of like we touched on earlier, I would just say soak it all in. And I know for me personally, I was just so ready and excited to have my own classroom and have my own students and all of that, that I was grateful for undergrad while I was in it. But looking back, I could have been even more grateful for it, you know?
More of a sponge.
Right, yes. And so in that, I mean, just soaking up the material that we're learning, which again is hard when you like don't have the actual classroom to apply it to, but I just wish that I could have absorbed even more things. I mean, we got a ton out of it. Like, I still have all my notes and stuff from all of our classes, but yeah, I would just say soak it all in and then really just enjoy the time with your professors and with your fellow future teachers, because now, like, I would give anything to have those 30 people back and we could just, like, get dinner together or, like, talk about our experiences and stuff, and the things that we did sometimes when we were in undergrad. Like now I would give anything if we could just do that again, but now we're spread out all over the country, so it's harder.
Yes, it's much harder. I would say like all of the same things, and also just know that, and I don't want to like scare people who are going to think about going to college for education, but know that as a teacher, you're going to be held to a very high standard of, like in Florida, there's, in every state, there's like a code of ethics for teachers, and you are a role model for children. So you are going to be taken very seriously, like from the jump, by your professors, by your program leads, by everyone involved. Just maintain a very respectable, professional reputation with your peers, with your professors. Use them as like a fountain of knowledge. I mean, I'm so jealous of Maddie because she has one of my favorite people, I'm sure her favorite people too, is her first year teacher mentor, because she was fortunate to stay in Gainesville where we were going to school, and she's an amazing, amazing source, I'm sure, for you now in your first year, but even in school. So just look at what you're doing a little bit as like, it's going to matter in your career. Those connections are going to get you into doors, they're going to open doors for you, or they're going to leave those doors closed to you. So just take it seriously, but also like enjoy it. You are still a college student, of course. Like you are still free to grow and be a college student, but just take it seriously, I would say.
Yep, and just touching on that, I would say keep everything professional. You know, just with all of your social media profiles and just, I mean, you're just you in general, not even just how you portray yourself, but just you and like your heart, your intentions, how you carry yourself, how you interact with professors and staff and everything at your college, because that directly translates. I mean, like we both got letters of recommendation from professors in our college, and I mean, I think they were very quickly willing to write them for both of us because we both made an effort to get to know them and always be very professional in everything that we did. So yes, I would just say really focus on viewing yourself as a professional and treating, even though you're still an undergrad student, treat yourself as a professional. Yeah,
I would say it's very unique being in education. Like I'm sure that you make connections in other majors as well, but I don't know that your professors are the ones to write a recommendation letter at a school they used to work at. I mean, many of the professors that we had or the faculty members used to teach in the county where our school was. So, I mean, they're very real connections. And I wish I could have stayed like in Florida in that area. You guys know I'm in Massachusetts now, but yeah, they're very real people who are tied very closely to the jobs that you're going to be looking for. So yeah, take it seriously.
I think we have 2 more in this category.
Woohoo! All right. What goes into getting a master's? Touch on the process. Ooh, I like this one. I think our experience was a bit different because the program that we were in was generally, it's structured as like an add-on year, but it's very much encouraged, almost to the point of a requirement, to stay for the additional year to earn the master's. There are a lot of components of the program and the internship experience and such that if you were to skip out on that final year where we did the year-long internship, I don't know that I would have felt
I definitely
ready, to be honest. But for us, we weren't in the position of having left school, gotten started with our lives, being a full-time teacher, and then having to go back to get the master's, which I think is why they so strongly encourage you to stay that additional year, is because it almost felt like just a continuation. Like it didn't seem so much different from undergrad, other than the internship really shifted and grew in responsibilities from the other student teaching experiences. But I would say the process, I mean, I feel like the coursework became a bit more elevated. It was a little bit more of like practice. It was a lot more of application. I would say that. Because generally I think in your master's, whether you are a teacher already and you've already entered the profession and then you're earning your master's alongside of teaching, or like in our case, we were full-time interns, there's a different level to the learning because not only are you taking these classes, but you're also teaching a class. So you can immediately apply these things and then
to actual kids.
And reflect on them. And it's really shifting into like driving the instruction that you're doing then. I would say that's the biggest change I noticed in the master's year.
I'm grateful, like you said, that our program fed right into the undergrad to our grad year in the combined program, because I think it would have been much harder to come back to get a master's if we had already been in the real world of teaching. I feel like I might at some point go back for another master's degree, either in ed administration or something of that nature.
Oh, I was so hoping she would say that.
Breaking it out.
Yeah, you would crush it. Okay, that's awesome.
Thanks.
Yay. Anyways.
Yeah, I don't have any official plans of that yet, but that might be something that I look into in the future.
You should.
Thanks. We'll see. But I'm really glad that we went on through straight to our master's, and it was definitely a challenging year of managing all of our classes online while being in the classroom full time. And both of us, I think, would stay with our mentor teacher until they left school each day, like past whatever the contract time was. And so there were a lot of days that we were at school from 7 until 4 or 5 or whatever, and then we had to come home and do online coursework and then work jobs to make a little bit of money and that kind of thing. So it was challenging, but I definitely feel like that we learned a lot that year.
Oh, absolutely. And looking back, and like if I were to remove the knowledge and the coursework that we did in our master's from my brain and take that all away, I would not be half the teacher that I am. So just like we talked about the internship, look at the master's program that you're in the same way of like it's a season, and think about what you're going to get out of it and how greatly it's going to impact your teaching, and just push through, because it's definitely worth it, I would say. I mean, kudos to those people who go back to school to get their master's after having intern teaching, because that has to be so hard. But I do know some schools will pay for you.
Yeah, I was just about to say that too. I think look into your district and just maybe some potentially online programs that your district could possibly reimburse you for taking those.
And I would say, as a teacher, aside from just a hard set like degree program, even now there are a lot of certificate programs that I'm looking into that I feel like you always are just continuing your education, because times are changing and you always are going to experience new things every year, and there are a lot of certification courses and such that I would like to do now that just I still have things to learn. I mean, you always have things to learn, so just keep learning. Look at it as extended PD, I guess.
Okay, we have one more question in this category. It says, what should I collect or buy before graduating or getting my first classroom?
That's a good one. You had a lot more than I did, I think.
Yeah.
But you knew that you were going to be a teacher forever.
Yes, like literally my whole life I wanted to teach. And so I would say I started collecting things probably about 2 or 3 summers before I was going to actually have my classroom. And I tried to be intentional with the things that I bought. I wanted to buy something so that it wouldn't be all an upfront cost right when I was getting my classroom set up. But I also don't have a ton of storage space in my house, and so I didn't have a ton of space to store things, which ended up kind of being a problem because it was like taking over our whole house. But I would say if you're going to collect just one thing, I would say start out with books for your library, because they're so hard to come by, especially if you're trying to get them kind of more cheaply, either at garage sales or thrift stores or library sales, which we've had our fair share of, or like hand-me-downs and things. Just start collecting them early and put the word out, either like on your Facebook or your Instagram, or just word of mouth to family, friends. I've had a lot of families that I used to babysit for, once they realized that teachers kind of need to supply their own books and a lot of the supplies and stuff, they were happily ready to give me things that they were going to give away anyway. But yes, I would say if one thing, books. I did end up collecting just a lot of things, but I also knew that I was going to be staying local and using them, and I just tried to be intentional with the things that I bought, so that sorry, that was a long story to say the same thing.
So useful.
But I would also say to start putting away just like money and gift cards that you get, because they will come in very handy when you when it's time to set up. I don't know exactly how much I spent, but it was probably a few $1,000s. And so just put away money. You can ask for money for your birthday or holidays that you celebrate, Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever. Just like I kept an envelope labeled classroom so that I could spend it that summer right before I went into teaching. And I tried to kind of save the bigger things like my table caddies and the storage things. I tried to save those until like right before I was ready to move in.
I would agree with that. One caution I would give you is that we both knew that we wanted to teach primary grades, like between, like I know for me, like my ceiling is 2nd and my floor is K, like which is a very limited grade band, like. But I'm pretty strong in that, like, I know that my heart is there in the primary grades, which I think answers a later question. But that makes it a bit easier when collecting books, especially because then we know that we should have variety, starting with, like, you know, predictable books and even like board books in some cases to learn text features, and just there are different kinds of books that you can collect. So if you're not sure of where you're going to land, if you haven't had those experiences yet of knowing what grade, specifically if you're liking upper elementary or you're liking lower elementary, really that's as far as like the certification would go from K to 6 in Florida. I would say just like make sure you have a general idea before you start collecting books. Other than that, I'm thinking what things to buy before. I mean, it's really, really hard, especially when you're in school and you're so excited to get into teaching, to walk by the teacher dollar spot in the summer and not buy everything. But I will say, like, there are a lot of things that I've used, a lot of things, and I still have like one like under the bed bin of just stuff from the dollar spot. But every now and then I'll think of something in my class like, oh, I could use this. I mean, it's only been like 5 months, but there are some things in there that I haven't used yet, I'll be honest, a lot of things. But it's in one bin and I'll think like, oh, I think I have that in my bin. And I'll go and I'll pull it out and yep, there's some sentence strips, there's some word strips, like there's some little clocks or something. Like there's always something that's in there that I use. Yeah, it was harder for me because I had to move it all, literally from Florida to Massachusetts. So my whole hoard of stuff that I had collected, I had to move. But
I would need a U-Haul just for my classroom.
I would say like be cautious, but be okay with like getting some things ahead of time. And the gift cards were huge. I had one for Staples that I was just holding on to, and I didn't know what I was going to need, but I knew I was going to need something, and I was just holding on to this gift card. And then there was an HP Instant Ink eligible printer that went on like a doorbuster sale from like $200 to $50. And I had a $50 Staples gift card. And I'm like, that's it. That's the thing that I was waiting for to use this gift card on. So yeah, gift cards were huge. Yeah, for sure.
And I would add one more thing to that. Going back to earlier, all of my lists. I was having a really hard time during the last back to school season when I was still in my master's year, but it wasn't my classroom yet. I was watching all these other teachers buying things and preparing and all of that. And I was like, I need to buy the things because I'm not going to remember next year that I need that specific thing, whatever. And so what ended up being really helpful for me was I got another notebook. And I kind of separated my classroom into like a page on each. And so like my library, okay, what are things that I'm going to need to buy for my library? Like I'm going to need a rug, I'm going to need some pillows, I need bins, I need the bookshelf. Like tried to think of all the things I would need to buy, things to do, like label the books, all of that. And then I kind of made a master list too on my computer in Google Docs of just like all the supplies that I was going to need. And then when it did, so then I could just keep adding to it whenever I thought of stuff. And then when it came time to go shopping this summer before my first year, I had the list, and so I separated it into stores of like, I'm going to get these things at Target, these things at Walmart. So I would say if you don't have a lot of room to store stuff yet, which both of us, neither of us had a ton of room to store stuff ahead of time, write it down. Again, you think you're going to remember, but you won't. So just write it down so that you can access that list later.
Yeah, definitely.
We have one more category in this part. And so this last category we titled Getting the Job, which I'm going to leave this mostly to Lauren. I'll give like a 30-second spiel and then I'll leave it all to her. So I got a job at the same school that I did my internship at, which I'm so thankful because I love my school a lot. And so I only had to do one interview, and I still did prepare for that interview and was so nervous and felt all the things, but I only went through that one interview and knew the team already because it's the same team that I interned with. And so I have a little bit of experience, but Lauren, like I said earlier, has just a whole fountain of wisdom on this, so I'm going to leave most of this to her. So I'm going to quiz her.
I don't know about a fountain, but I'll do my best.
So I'm going to kind of quiz her and like read her the questions and have her answer. When should I start looking for my first teaching job?
Ooh, that's a good one. So I moved 2 days after Christmas last year. So I was up in Massachusetts basically like the start of the calendar year, about January, and I was already looking. There's a website that's called School Spring, which here in Florida, most schools, the counties or the districts have their own application, like AppleTrack, the tracking system. So you almost apply for like the district, or you enter your information there, and then you're able to see the job listings in that district. But in Massachusetts, where I moved to find a job, the districts are much smaller. There's some districts have like 2 schools in them, just the way it is up there. And a lot of schools use this website called School Spring. So I was looking on this website for postings starting in like January. And I think I applied to
a lot.
like 27 different schools. But yeah, I would say start looking as soon as possible. I mean, I wasn't even certified yet, and I hadn't gotten my Florida license back yet from Florida, and I hadn't even started all of the tests for the Massachusetts license, but I was already looking and sending things, and I had like a part on my resume of like license pending for Florida, and then for Massachusetts, I would say like in process of obtaining license, but I was still applying. So I look as soon as you can look. But
right. Yeah, and I would say just get familiar with the time frame of your district. So for example, my district could kind of start informally just seeing what positions they were going to have available, because they asked the current staff if they were going to be returning or not in about February. So then that's when the principals figured out which openings they were going to have. And then they could kind of start informally figuring out how many people they would need. And then in April is when we had the big district career fair where they did a lot of interviews. That's when I signed my contract. It was on April 9th. I remember. I was so excited.
I remember too.
Yeah, and so I signed my contract, and then that was kind of on the earlier side of things. Like, I know a lot of people didn't sign it until later on in the summer, but like where Lauren was, they were in school until like mid-June. And so I remember you were June. Kind of getting a little discouraged at first when like I was
absolutely
like going through the process and like signing my contract, and like they were nowhere close to even knowing their openings yet.
Yeah. So just like you said, know the district and know the time frame. So in Massachusetts, obviously there are snow days. That's not a thing here. So their school year is a whole big shift in the year. So they were still in school by the time most of the positions in Florida had been like solidified, hired. I saw all of our friends from our cohort were like getting their first jobs, and they had their rooms, and like they knew where they were going to be. And I was just waiting. Like, I had sent out all these applications, and I was still just waiting because the hiring season is later in places, especially like in the Northeast or just in the North in general, where the school year is later. So just know that, but apply and look for them as soon as you can, for sure. And like get your foot in the door. Lauren's going to touch on this in a minute, but she prepared an amazing teaching portfolio that she was dropping off at schools like left and right, that she had applied to, just trying to show her face and get her name out there, so that when and if there was an opening, that the principals would think of her. But she's going to talk more about that in just a minute. Okay, interview tips. Yeah, okay, so for interview tips, this is hard because there are so many. I kind of took it as, I took a different approach than a lot of, I would say, like, advice I was getting from YouTube or from other sources. I didn't practice specific questions because I just feel like they could ask literally any question. And if I was going to be in a position where I was only comfortable reciting a rehearsed answer, then I just wouldn't feel natural or myself. If they were to ask a question I hadn't prepared for, then they'd be like, well, who's this girl? Because just a minute ago you were talking so nicely and professionally, and now you don't seem so comfortable anymore. So instead, for interview and to help myself kind of calm my nerves, I made a list. I think I called it interview mentionables or something. But anytime I would think of something, an experience I had in my internship, a lesson I taught, you know, my teaching philosophy, anything that was very important to me, I wrote it down. This is actually an interview skill, I guess, that I've heard from like other career sources. It's called bridging. So you have your things that are important to talk about, and no matter what questions they ask, you can bridge to those things that are like your strengths. So like I knew that I wanted to talk about teaching globally. I knew that I wanted to talk about my experiences at the ESOL Center School and my experiences working with like an underserved population abroad and things like that. So I kind of would hear different questions, and I knew that I could drive the conversation that way. But I mean, I would answer their questions for sure, and definitely like take a peek at some of the lists that people kind of put out there. I know I watched, this is like a running joke between us, we were both obsessed with Michelle Ferre.
From Pocket Full
Still are. But I watched her interview video that she has like sample answers for, and just kind of like thought about the questions and what I might say. But yeah, I would say general interview tips is just know yourself. Write down those things, like have a lesson you're most proud of, have some things that went really well, have some idea of like what you would change, but don't, I'm not going to say don't rehearse answers, but I didn't rehearse answers, but I felt calm, and I felt like I knew myself, and I knew how I was going to answer questions, and I knew what my strengths were, so that helped me. Aside from like your actual interview content, I would say dressing professionally, nicer than you would for like a day in the classroom. Like, not right now, I'm wearing leggings and shirt, but like what Maddie is wearing is very nice with like a pair of like pixie pants from Old Navy. This would be like a perfect teacher outfit, but like I don't know about you, but I wouldn't
wear this to an interview.
I wouldn't wear that to an interview. I wore like a pencil skirt with a blouse and heels. Like I wore like stilettos. I mean, I'm extra, but I wore like a professional outfit to the interview. So I would just say, like, take it very seriously, take it professionally. Yeah, I don't know, I guess that's
my interview, I wish that I would have kind of written down that list of mentionables, like she said, because I had thought about all of those experiences, but then when I was in there, I still remembered a good amount of them, but I think I would have felt more comfortable if I would have had a list, you know, of just like, I want to remember to talk about that. But my interview was more so, instead of, it was some content based in the beginning, but then a lot of it was scenario based. So if this thing and this thing happened, what would you do? How would you handle it? If this person said this, if you had this thing happen with your team, like how would you deal with all of those things? And so that was another thing that couldn't really be rehearsed. I think it was just my principal wanted to see just our natural response to that, which showed like our character, which is not really something that you can rehearse.
No, you can't prepare for. I had situational questions like that too that totally were out of left field and threw me for a loop, and you just have to answer them how you would do it. Like, what would you do? And that's not something you can practice.
And something, it's not really a tip, but I just thought it was cool. Something that my principal said was that he always keeps a framed picture of his kids behind wherever the person that's interviewing sits. And then he always glances up at that picture to think, would this person be a good teacher for any of my kids? And just kind of using that as a frame of reference, which isn't really a tip, but I just thought that that was cool, and I had never heard anyone say that before.
One more thing that I will say, it mattered for me, especially in my job search, but just know that, like, everyone knows each other. So even before your interview happens, they'll know something about you from someone in that district who knows someone who knows something about you. Like, they are going to hear things about you, and just make sure that those are positive things. Like, if you're going on interviews for interview practice, which is one thing that some people recommend, some don't, but if you're going to take interviews for jobs that you don't necessarily see yourself like doing effectively, like maybe it's a grade level that's really challenging for you, or maybe it was a commute that's too far, but you're thinking, you know, I'm just going to take this interview because I won't get the job, but it'll be good practice. Still take it seriously and do a great job, because I promise you, they are going to say something to someone who will then know you at the school that you get hired at. So know that, like, when you're going into an interview, even if it's one that you're just doing for practice, take it seriously and just do a good job. Don't think of any interview as like water under the bridge. It won't matter. Like, ooh, scratch that one. Like, no, you can't scratch it. So take it seriously.
And I would say that that was kind of Lauren's exact experience. Not that she was having a practice interview by any means, but she interviewed at a school and it just didn't end up being the right fit mutually. But that principal was the one that recommended her to her current principal, right? For when they heard, when the first principal heard that there was an opening at the other school, that's when they connected, and the first principal recommended Lauren for that job. So everything is all interwoven.
Yeah, it definitely is. So just know that about the interview process, and you explained it really well. But it was just like a higher grade level than I was comfortable teaching, and then within the district, the principal heard that there was a lower grade level, and then all of a sudden I got a phone call from a principal that I hadn't even met or talked to yet, who had talked to him. So take every interview seriously and do your very best.
All right, last question in part one. I'm leaving this one totally up to her because I haven't made mine yet. But what should be in your professional portfolio?
Ooh, I wish I had it. It's in Massachusetts. Okay, I'm trying to think.
It's so good.
I think I did like a general walkthrough when I did like my hiring story. I posted a video of like how I got hired, what my experience was, and I just quickly showed what's in my portfolio. It was harder for me to make after the fact because I did not take enough photos. Like, I cannot stress this enough. In your student teaching, take so many pictures
of everything.
Take pictures of everything. Take pictures of the behavior management system. Fortunately, I did have photos from setting up. My mentor teacher moved classrooms, so I had photos because we were redoing like essentially like a new classroom for the second part of my internship. It was an empty space, so I was taking pictures, a lot of pictures, thinking about setting up my own room. So I had pictures of the behavior management we used. I had pictures of the different systems we had in place. Like, I had a plan for everything. Like my assistant principal and principal now in my interview were looking through my portfolio for like, they read the whole thing cover to cover. And I know some people say that no one looks at it, but in mine, I had sections for my resume. I had random certificates from things that we had done in undergrad. We did this like science day or something that they gave us a certificate for. It was in there. Like my certificates from my experiences abroad were in there. Like I had a whole section on certificates and licensing and stuff. Flip it. I had my resume and my cover letter. That was actually in the front. I had a section on behavior management with how I was going to manage individual behaviors, how I was going to manage class behaviors, my general approach to management. I had a whole section on like the different academic areas. I had a section on like reading and how I would structure reading, because I promise you they'll ask about like how you'll structure a reading block. They will.
Yep.
I even had like a miscellaneous section, like an other section that had random stuff in it. Like I had a part about the desk fairy and how I wanted to use the desk fairy, and they loved it. Like, I'm telling you, when I went to my interview and they looked at my portfolio, they were walking me around the hall, like showing teachers, which is funny now because now I work with those teachers. They probably are thinking like, oh my gosh, that was so ridiculous. But showing the portfolio, like, have you seen this? Like, this is crazy. Like, everyone should have one of these. So just put everything in it. I will say, I'm pretty sure I bought Michelle Ferrer's portfolio template. I knew that for sure. I'm just thinking if all of the sections were pre-made or if I created some of them on my own. I think most of them she had already made like a header for. So it's a really good like launch pad to make your portfolio, because there are a lot of sections listed there. I didn't use all of them. And especially in your first year, know that some of your sections are going to be a little bit of like in theory, like this is how I will do things,
how I plan to do
do things, even if you haven't done them yet. So some of them I talked about how I planned to manage student workflow with a student mailbox system, and I literally found a picture of one that I liked and said like, this is a system similar to the one I plan to implement in my classroom. I didn't claim it as my own, but it is nice to have pictures, I would say. So I found like pictures and I would say like, this is something similar to what I plan to implement in my first classroom. I mean, they know you're a first year teacher. You're not gonna like pull the wool over their eyes. They'll know that. But yeah, lots of pictures, talk about everything. I literally wrote out everything. Like I talked about how they were going to get pencils, how they were going to ask to go to the bathroom, how they were going to ask to get water. Like I had every single system. That's the most important. I would say like write out your plan for every system, because my principal was like, oh, the first week of school, you're going to know exactly what you're teaching because you're going to teach all of these systems and you've thought about all of these systems. So
yeah, and I would just say that even if your principal or whoever is interviewing you does not look through the whole thing, because I think that's kind of more uncommon that they will like read it cover to cover. I think more so they'll usually flip through it. Some might not even look at it at all. But I think just the fact that you worked so hard to prepare that just shows them your passion and your knowledge and experience, even though you might be a first year teacher, that you have thought about all the things that you're wanting to do. And I think also you could use it as a reference, like your kind of list of mentionables. Like I know a popular interview question is like, tell us about the best lesson that you've taught or a favorite lesson that you've taught, or one, like you could open it and be like, this is the lesson plan, these are pictures from it. And so you could be the one to flip through it and kind of have it remind you of things that you want to talk about. So
use it. Lesson plan, that was a good point. I had a full lesson plan in mind, like a full lesson plan that we would have to write in our master's year. And my principal looked at it and I think she told me like, please don't write one this long when we do an observation, because this is so long, and so I'm glad that it's so expansive, but like, don't do this in the future. But yeah, definitely have a lesson plan. I would say one more thing and then we'll wrap up this section and move to Maddie's channel. I had a leather bound version of my portfolio, which is the one that I showed in my video. And then I had not disposable, but like essentially disposable versions of my portfolio that were in the little plastic like folder.
Like the prong plastic folders?
Like presentation folders that you would bring for like a business demo and drop on everyone's desk. So I bought them in like cute colors because of who I am as a person. I bought like teal and blue and pink, and everywhere I would go to an interview, I would bring my leather one and I would have one of those underneath it, and then I would say, I'm going to keep this copy, but I'm going to leave this one with you in case you have any questions or you want to look back at anything. Please keep this copy of my portfolio, and I would leave those. And like the little folder things are like probably $2, but it was worth it. And then the schools that hadn't called me yet for an interview, you can see on SchoolSpring, the website I was talking about, you can see if they've opened your application. You can see if they've like, this is depressing, but if they like deemed you like not worthy, you'll see like that they're not interested, or you'll see when the position is filled, or if they're interviewing, I think are like the different things that you can see. So if I saw that they had opened my application, but they hadn't called me for an interview, I'm thinking like, I gotta let them know how cool I am. Just kidding. But I would bring those like disposable portfolios to the main office, because at this point they were still in school, like I had said. And I would just say, hi, is the principal or assistant principal available? I've applied online for a position. I would just love to put a face to the name and just introduce myself. And if they were, I think maybe twice the person was actually there, they would just come out and I would just shake their hand and say, hi, my name is Lauren Barnard. I'm new to the area. You know, I just recently graduated with my master's and I applied online for this position. I just wanted to leave this portfolio with you. Thank you for your time. And then I would leave. So yeah, and I would just let them have it. So yeah, be willing to just throw copies at people.
And we both got jobs.
Yeah. And it will all work out.
It definitely will. Well, thank you so much for watching part 1. I'm going to briefly just tell you the things that we're going to talk about in part 2 over on my channel.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about just our specific school routines and schedules a little bit. That one only has a few questions. Just our first year experience overall and just some of the things that we've learned and that kind of thing. Just some general teaching questions and then some fun miscellaneous that didn't really fit into any other category.
Yay!
So we really appreciate you watching this one. We've wanted to do this for a long time and it was really fun to get to do my first collaboration with you.
Yes, this is perfect. And it's almost like, I know that we keep very well in touch and keep up to date with everything, but hearing you answer these questions is like, oh, that's true. It's like we're having a nice little conversation together with you guys. So we will see you soon, and I will see you all next time. I have some vlogs coming, weekly vlogs, and in January, there'll be some exciting events, so stay tuned. You'll learn about those. Maddie already knows. But yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much. Like the video if you liked it. Comment if you have any questions.
Subscribe to her channel.
Oh yeah, please. For me or for Maddie, and definitely go check out Maddie's channel for the second half.
We'll link it. Bye.